Sequels that come out only a few years after the original concern me. The general approach that needs to be taken towards sequels is based on righting wrongs and putting into practice what you've learned from reviews, and exploring ideas that might have ended up on the cutting room floor the first time around. When it came out in 2015, Splatoon caused quite a stir as Nintendo showed the world that A, they can make a competent, functional shooter game, and B, they can make it interesting. In a market saturated with black and white first and third person shooters, Splatoon acts as the perfect foil to one of the most well-trodden tropes of the last 10 years. This much colour in a game where you shoot people, kids, squids, I don't know. It's crazy stuff. I have to be skeptical when approaching a sequel that comes out so soon after the original, but there's bigger problems out there. If you're unfamiliar with the general gist of Splatoon, which is helpful since, as you'll find out later, Splatoon 2 doesn't really change up that much. Basically, you're a squid kid who goes around shooting floors, walls, and other squid kids with coloured ink, in pursuit of covering most of the battlefield with your team's colour. Your character can shapeshift from a kid into a squid, which allows you to swim in the ink of your colour, speeding up movement around the stage and giving you a refill of ink. The first game had an extensive and dedicated multiplayer scene, including competitive teams, but it also came with a single-player campaign where you stop evil octopi by inking your way through some really creatively designed levels. Splatoon 1 was received really well, not just because of the charm behind the concept and the world this game is set in, but also because of how this game handles movement. If you want to make a shooter game fun, movement around a stage has to be enjoyable. Being able to dive in and out of ink, climb walls, create paths for you and your teammates to travel through a stage, it's so satisfying. Which brings me nicely to Splatoon 2, where very little has changed, really. I kinda saw this coming when it was first revealed in January, since sequels to popular multiplayer-focused shooters don't tend to uproot everything from the first game. Honestly, I don't know why you would. Well, I guess you could argue that with a game as unique as Splatoon, there's bound to be lots of ideas that never made it into the original game, but this never really shows itself in a major way throughout Splatoon 2. The story's a bit different this time around. Callie of the Squid Sisters, who hosted the Splatfest from the first game, has gone missing. And so has the Great Zapfish again, and it was probably those pesky octopi again. I don't know, I guess we need someone to blame. But interestingly, the replacement Squid Sisters, for what it's worth, one of them is an octopus. She's adorable and I will protect her, but that's a little confusing. Maybe I'm missing out on some of this lore, it gets a little complicated. The single player is great as always, there wasn't any debating that, even though it acts as more of an extended tutorial that doesn't really feel like one. But what I love about it this time is that it gives you other weapons to use. From what I remember, Splatoon 1 forced you to use the standard gun for every stage in this mode, leaving you with too many options and not a lot of time to practice in the multiplayer. Thankfully, this is fixed in the sequel, and let me tell you, the Splat dualies are incredible. I mean, they're basically Tracer's pistols from Overwatch, especially if you upgrade the fire rate. You're getting close to enemies and melt them, I love them. There's also this umbrella shotgun, two words that should have been together a lot sooner, where you can shield yourself from enemy fire before shooting out the head of the umbrella to help close the distance. It's all great stuff, but on a first playthrough, you'll find that nearly every level in the game forces you to pick one specific weapon to complete the level with. This is kind of okay since every stage is designed around this, and you can always come back to it later so you can splat some fools with those dualies. But without spoiling too much, the final boss forces you to use the standard blaster, and it makes the fight way harder than it would have been otherwise. Sheldon the weapons guy is all like, "Hey, could you test this weapon for me? I need information." And I'm like, "I'm a little busy here, could it wait a while?" Anyway, multiplayer time, and if the single player was broadly the same as in Splatoon 1, the multiplayer seems close to a carbon copy of the first game with a few notable exceptions. Turf Wars is back being awesome, Rainmaker is back being one-sided for anyone who can aim a sniper rifle, and Tower Control is just madness where objectives don't really matter. Generally, the multiplayer is more concerned about using new weapons and maps rather than new modes. And I don't want to go on about it, but I went to an event a week ago with some pro Splatoon players, and they were all using the dualies, so the meta is here to stay. The only other change is quite a big one, and it's called Salmon Run. Think Man vs Machine from Team Fortress 2 or any kind of PvE mode in a PvP shooter game. Some weird bear wants you to fetch golden salmon eggs for him, and your team of 4 fight off waves of evil salmon. Again, 2 words that should have met much sooner in order to get those eggs. I really enjoyed it. I feel like there's a unique skill set that's tested by PvE game mode since the objective is a little funkier, and these CPUs enemies can't directly counter you. The more I played it, the more I realised just how much effort has been put into Hammond Run, since there's a bunch of different bosses to fight that each have advantages and disadvantages to certain weapons, and how each wave has the chance for the tide to go in or out, restricting or opening up the playing area. It's the only real major change from Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 2, but it's got way more to it than I thought it would have. Splatoon 2 in general is a weird game to talk about, since you can tell at multiple stages that not a lot has changed. Definitely if you're coming into it expecting sweeping alterations, I fear you may have the wrong expectations entirely. But the question still remains over whether or not it's a worthwhile purchase. Well, Splatoon 2 functions quite a lot like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but with enough small differences for it to be considered a new game. Nintendo can get away with this because the Switch's main selling point is portability, and being able to take Splatoon wherever you go is a big deal. I get the feeling though that Splatoon 2 doesn't really need to exist. Nintendo could have ported the first game over to the Switch while releasing an update that covers the new weapons, maps, and maybe even Hammond Run. As it is, you can't really consider Splatoon 2 as a sequel. For what it's worth, it functions as Splatoon Deluxe, and that's how you should approach it, as something you might want to buy. Really good, but kind of like a port. All this talk of being fresh, and ironically, that's the one thing missing here. We've seen it all before, it doesn't have the same impact as the first game. Still, the multiplayer is active, competitive, and I think there's an app now that lets you vocally communicate with your teammate through your phone, so good time to jump aboard. Thank you for watching, and thank you to Nintendo for sending me a copy of Splatoon 2 for this review. Take care, guys.